What's up, everybody? Nano Reef Nick here. Day 3 of the all-in-one Nano Cube Fiji build. If you can see there, I got 2 clownfish in there that I moved over from my other tank. Today's agenda, we're going to go over all things testing. So if you want to know everything that I test for and what makes my tank look so beautiful, stick around. So first up, the basic kit that I would suggest for anybody starting out with a new reef, they're going to want to test for pH, you're going to want to test for ammonia, you're going to want to test for nitrite and for nitrate. Obviously, so we can test to make sure that we're going through the nitrogen cycle. There's a test kit that I use. You can pick up at most local fish stores. You can pick it up at Petco, PetSmart, wherever. It's called API. It's a Saltwater Master Test Kit. It has all 4 of those tests that I just mentioned. Pretty easy to use, although there is some judgment involved with the color display on them, so some people do like to have a little bit more control with an electronic type test kit. So the next thing that I test for, I actually use the ice cap, salinity, and thermometer gauge. I usually test that about once a day. I also test using some Hanna products. I use a Hanna Phosphate test. I also use a Hanna Alkalinity and also a Hanna calcium test as well. And then the last thing that I do test for on occasion is Magnesium, which I use Salifert test for that, which is very easy to use, simple to get the results that you're looking for, and a very accurate guide. Magnesium I only test for on occasion because I'm only looking to make sure that that number stays above 1250. It can range a little bit and not affect the tank as much. But as far as what I test for when I'm cycling a tank, the first day what I test for is I test for the pH, I test for the ammonia, I test for the nitrites. I do not test for nitrates because they shouldn't be in the tank at that point. The second thing that I test for after that is I do use my Hanna checker to test my phosphates going into the tank and to test my alkalinity, and also to use the ice cap to test my salinity. So I'm going to run through the battery of tests that I would normally do, and then once you actually get your tank cycled and it's down to a manageable level, some of these tests you're going to be able to back off of. So what I do is I typically test my pH about once a week. I test my nitrate about once a week. My ammonia and my nitrite I only test when I feel like maybe there's some issue, but after the first week or so, I usually only test that about maybe once a month. My phosphates I test weekly as well, and my alkalinity I also test weekly, usually before and after my water changes. And the salinity I actually check usually daily just because it's so simple to do, which I'll actually get to now. So on the ice cap machine, you just simply click the on button and put it in the water. It's that simple. It's going to give you the reading in about 10 seconds. So there we are. My salinity reading is perfect, 1.025, which for my salinity ratings, I generally like to keep the, it's not necessarily a perfect number, but I do like to keep it in the range of 1.024 to 1.026 at the high end, or about 35 ppt, which I'm at 33 ppt right now. And then my temperature I like to keep between 77 and about 82 degrees is fine. I'm at 77.1 right now. California, it's very hot. Today is going to be about 110 again. So that's how I test my salinity. The next thing that I'm going to do is I actually test my phosphate and my alkalinity. Okay guys, so probably the most intense test, if you would, or the most complicated is the phosphate test. So I start with that. What you actually have to do is you have to actually open the reagent packet, open up the reagent packet, dump it into the sample water, which you're going to fill that line up to 10 milliliters of actual sample water out of the tank. And you're actually going to have to calibrate this machine. So what I do is I kind of do both tests at the same time to knock them out, the alkalinity and the phosphate test. So what you do is you simply close the checker with 10 milliliters of unreacted sample. You push the button. It's going to pop up with C1. Once it's ready, that means you're ready to calibrate. Press the button again. It's going to bring up C2. And what I'm doing in the meantime is I'm actually shaking this phosphate reagent in the reacted sample for 2 minutes, which you have to do to get a very accurate sample. So once the checker actually pops up C2, I've been shaking this for the previous 2 minutes. Once it pops up C2, I'm simply going to take out the sample that was unreacted, and I'm actually going to replace it with the sample that is reacted. Now, a key to making sure you get a good, clean, accurate sample and a good result is make sure that your test tube is actually clean before you put it into the checker. So I always wipe it down. And then with this phosphate one, this is actually going to be on a 3-minute timer, which is why I do this one first. Hold the button after it says C2, and it's going to pop up with a 3-minute timer. While that's going on, I simply take the unreacted sample, move it over to the alkalinity test for calibration. The alkalinity test is simple. Press C1 to calibrate. We're going to take 1 milliliter of the reagent that comes in the kit with Hanna. Measure it out. Once it says C2, we open it up. Add our reagent to the sample. Put the lid back on top. I like to turn it upside down about 5 times. And like I said, the key to this accuracy is making sure that you have a nice clean test tube when you put it back into the test kit. Close the lid, and on this one you're just going to press it 1 time, and it'll give us our alkalinity reading. So we're at 9.7, so we're actually good there. While that's still going on, the phosphate's still at 1 minute and 45 seconds to go. So the next things that I test for are going to be the pH, the nitrite, ammonia, and nitrate. So the first one that I use is the pH kit from API. These are all droppers. So this is going to be 5 drops on the pH test. This one you just shake upside down a couple of times. The test kit has a nice little spot to put the test tubes once they have the reaction. And they need to sit and wait for 5 minutes to get an accurate color sample. So while that's going on, I'm going to do my nitrite, which is also a 5-drop test. I can open it up. Add the 5 drops. Again, this one's simple. Turn it upside down, mix for even color. Place it in my test holder. Now the ammonia is a 2-part. It's 8 drops of each. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this one you can actually add both reagents to the sample and then shake it up. Again, 8 of the second. And then this one you're gonna want to give it a pretty good shake for about 10-15 seconds, just to make sure it's thoroughly shaken up. Put it in the test kit to wait. Now the last one is the nitrate test. Now this one's a little bit more difficult because you actually have to shake this one for 30 seconds prior to starting the test to get the most accurate results. So I shake this one up pretty good. I already shook it up a little bit before the video, so we're good to go. And what you're going to do with this one is actually 10 drops of both parts of the solution. So first one, and on this one I actually like to shake them up in between just to make sure we got uniformity in the mix. And then we're going to add in our second part of the nitrate test. 10 drops as well. And then the second part of this test is actually 1 minute of shaking. And while that was done, I can actually see my phosphate came back. It's at 0.04, which is perfect. I really like the phosphate range to be in the 0.03 to 0.07. Sometimes it can be a little higher than that. It's just going to lead to a little bit more algae in the tank, but 0.04 is just perfect. So we're going to shake this pretty vigorously for about a minute here just to make sure we get an accurate result on our nitrate test. And while this is going on, obviously the others are having time to develop. I'm going to give it a good 5 minutes to make sure that everything develops properly, and then we'll come back and check our results. All right, guys, we're back. Our test results are in. So we're looking at Our pH, I check it on the meter, looking good, about 8.1. For me personally, I like the pH to be between 7.8 and about 8.4, ideally closer to 8.4, but anywhere in that range is fine. Again, all of these numbers, it's not about chasing the perfect number, it's just a matter of making sure that we stay in that range. And one of the keys is stability, so we don't want to add anything too quickly to move it too fast up and down. If we're a little bit outside of the range, that's okay. Any of these results come in, the first thing that I learned in this is patience is the key to a good reef tank. So when you see something that might be a little bit out of whack, the first instinct is to panic and freak out and try to dose something into the tank. That's the worst thing that you can do most of the time. A lot of times just let things settle, and any way outside of that range, even just a little bit, is actually healthier than just doing a big spike where you go from an unhealthy range up to what would be considered a healthy range. Sometimes those swings are actually worse than the actual number itself, so be cognizant of that. My ammonia is just a little bit higher than it was yesterday. I did add the fish in yesterday, so that's probably the reason why there's a little bit of spike in ammonia. My nitrite's looking pretty good. It's low. And my nitrates are really low. So ideally the nitrate level on nitrite with an I like to keep that at 0 undetectable levels. Ammonia, 0 undetectable levels. From a nitrate standpoint, I actually don't mind if it's up in the 20 ppms. Once the tank is established, I'd like it to be closer down to maybe 5 or 10 ppms. But for now, everything's looking great. So reef's in good shape. If you can see, crystal clear water. My fish are looking pretty good. They're swimming around, getting used to their new home. Again, this is brought to you by Nano Reef Nick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. At the end of this video, click like, subscribe, share with a friend. Okay, so one of the questions I'm asked a lot is, what do I do if my testing stuff is a little bit out of whack or my parameters aren't quite in line with what should be ideal? The most important thing that I can stress in this is have patience. Take your time, don't overreact, let things settle. Sometimes with the tank there can be a little bit of outside of those normal ranges and not have any effect on the tank whatsoever. So little things like maybe your nitrite is a little bit high, maybe your phosphate's a little bit high. Those are going to lead to things like maybe a little bit of an algae bloom, but nothing that's going to really harm your tank in the long run. And dosing things into the tank may actually have more of a negative effect than just letting them be. So obviously, if you're seeing ammonia or you're seeing nitrite, you need to do something quickly to react to make sure that your fish aren't harmed if there's any livestock in the tank. I personally use turbo start. If I see any ammonia in the tank, I add more turbo start just to make sure obviously there's good nitrifying bacteria in the tank to take care of that as quickly as possible. But once you have an established tank, you really shouldn't see that. So when you're doing your initial tests for the cycling, you're going to see those numbers spike up in the beginning. Then once they come down to undetectable levels of ammonia and nitrite, then I feel like it's safe to add any type of livestock into the tank. At this point, everything is pretty stable, so I feel comfortable to start adding corals if I really wanted to. And again, the longer you wait, just the better it is. So in this case, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to have a little bit of patience, but wouldn't be out of question to start adding corals at this point, and I think we'd be able to be fine. But I am going to take my time with this one because it is a year build. So thanks for joining, guys. Again, like, subscribe, share with a friend. Appreciate it.